He's not The Rock. He's not Chris Hemsworth. And he's definitely not one of those A-list Hollywood heartthrobs that every studio is chasing. But when Alan Ritchson took off his shirt in the series Reacher, the world stopped for a solid 3 seconds. Not just because of the muscles, though, yeah, those helped. It was something else. A presence. Cool, rugged, calculated, like a silent assassin in a plain t-shirt, ripped straight from the pages of a throwback action novel. But behind all that on-screen power was a guy who once got cut early from American Idol, overlooked in Hollywood, and spent more than 15 years grinding in the shadows just to land a role that truly mattered. Welcome to the unbelievable journey of Alan Ritchson, from failed singer to Hollywood's newest ideal of the modern leading man. Childhood and the untold beginnings of Alan Ritchson. Alan Ritchson was born on November 28, 1982, in Grand Forks, a small, unassuming town in the heart of North Dakota. He grew up in a modest household, without any artistic lineage, Hollywood connections, or financial backing to smooth the path ahead. To many, it might sound like a dull start. But for Alan, that simple beginning became the foundation of the resilience and grit that would later define him. His father, David Ritchson, served in the U.S. Air Force. His mother was a devoted high school teacher, the quiet kind of hero who passed on values more than lectures. Alan was the middle child, sandwiched between two brothers. His childhood was shaped by discipline from a military dad and warmth from a nurturing mom. The Ritchsons didn't have much, but they made sure their kids never felt the lack. Spiritually, emotionally, the tank was always full. Alan wasn't the loud, boisterous kid you might expect. He was quiet, introspective, the kind of boy who preferred sketchbooks over sports. He'd spend hours drawing superheroes, inventing characters in his head, and pouring his imagination onto the page. If you had asked young Alan what he wanted to be when he grew up, his answer wouldn't have been movie star or action hero, it would have been comic book artist. And that wasn't just some childhood phase. The kid had real talent. His drawings were detailed, expressive, and showed an unusual sensitivity to form and story, especially for someone so young. But over time, one thing became clear: Alan had presence. He was tall, striking, with the kind of clean-cut good looks and natural athleticism that seemed ripped straight from the very comics he used to draw. Those features started opening doors. In high school, Alan tried his hand at performing arts, music, drama, anything creative that sparked something inside him. And just to make a little money, he picked up work as a part-time model. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave him his first taste of the camera, the lights, the framing, the stillness required to fill a frame without saying a word. Still, even Alan couldn't have predicted where this road would lead. He didn't crave the spotlight. He wasn't chasing fame. And Hollywood? It certainly wasn't chasing him. In the eyes of casting agents at the time, Alan was just another handsome guy with a decent voice and a gym membership. That's it. But life rarely follows a tidy script. Sometimes, it's the ones who get overlooked the longest who rise the highest. The ones dismissed early on, not because they lack talent, but because no one bothered to look deeper. Alan Ritchson is living proof of that truth. And as you'll soon see, his story is only just getting started. From pretty boy who couldn't sing to the role that changed everything. In 2004, America had its eyes glued to American Idol, the show that launched megastars like Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood. Every week, thousands of hopefuls auditioned for a shot at fame, each dreaming of becoming the next overnight sensation. Among them was a young man with the build of a model, confident eyes, and a megawatt smile. His name? Alan Ritchson. And Alan didn't just sing, he made an entrance. To the surprise of the judges and viewers at home, he walked on stage and took off his shirt. That shredded six-pack and chiseled frame caught everyone's attention, especially Judge Paula Abdul. But the moment he started singing, the shine started to fade. Simon Cowell, never one to sugarcoat, looked unimpressed. Paula smiled, not because of the vocals, but maybe because the abs were doing most of the heavy lifting. Alan got cut. Quickly. No fanfare. No second chances. It was a loss. And for many, it might have been an embarrassment tough to swallow. But what made Alan different wasn't his voice, it was the way he handled failure. Years later, reflecting on the moment, he simply said, "I knew I wasn't a singer. But I had to try. At least so people would know I was there." Strangely enough, that brief, barely noticed appearance turned out to be the first real turning point in his career. He may have only made it to the top 87, but he stood out just enough to catch the eye of a few casting directors. Soon after, Alan landed his first audition. The role? None other than Aquaman in the hit TV series Smallville, one of the earliest live-action takes on the iconic superhero. Imagine that, a guy who just got eliminated from a singing competition now stepping into the boots of a superhero on a primetime show. It sounded crazy, even to Alan. But he didn't take the role for fame. He took it to prove something. That he could be more than a pretty face who couldn't sing. And audiences noticed. His version of Aquaman, cool, brooding, effortlessly magnetic, made an impact. He wasn't the lead, and his screen time was limited, but whenever he showed up, people paid attention. It wasn't a career-defining performance, but it was a signal. Alan Ritchson was here, and he wasn't going anywhere. After Smallville, more roles followed. He showed up in shows like 90210 and Blue Mountain State. Little by little, he carved out a niche for himself, the handsome, jacked guy with just the right amount of wild energy and a wicked sense of humor. He had that playful twinkle in his eye and a body that looked like it was sculpted in a Marvel lab. For a while, he became every teen drama's secret weapon, the low-key heartthrob fans couldn't stop crushing on. But even with the momentum building, Hollywood wasn't quite ready to hand him the keys to the kingdom. Casting directors still saw him as likable, solid, usable. Not the guy you build a franchise around. Not the guy who headlines your next big project. Just the guy who makes scene for pop a little more with his smile and muscles. Alan felt it. And it stung. He once shared that he felt like he was trapped in a glass box, where everyone could see him, but no one was really looking. They saw the surface, but not the substance. The spotlight, for him, was never the end goal. What he truly wanted was respect, to be seen for what he could bring to a role, not just how he looked in it. He had entered Hollywood through an unconventional door, a singing competition he wasn't qualified for, with a body that got more attention than his voice. And ever since, he'd been working to break out of the very mold that had gotten him through that door in the first place. That journey, the fight to be taken seriously, to be seen as more than a body or a gimmick, was just beginning. The struggles, rejection, doubt, and being overlooked. When you see Alan Ritchson on screen, towering, chiseled, a face like it was carved out of stone, and a smile soft enough to melt a room, it's easy to assume he was born for fame. Like the kind of guy Hollywood would instantly roll out the red carpet for. But the truth couldn't be further from that fantasy. Behind the muscles and the movie star looks was a road that was anything but smooth. It was steep, winding, and at times, so uncertain that Alan seriously considered walking away from it all. In an interview after Reacher became a breakout success, Alan said something that made everyone listening go quiet. "I've been working hard for almost 20 years, and I've rarely, if ever, been the first choice. I was option B, C, sometimes Z. It wasn't bitterness. It was just the truth." For years, Alan hustled, audition after audition, project after project. He'd walk into casting rooms with confidence, give everything he had, then walk out with a polite smile and a sinking feeling inside. Not because he didn't deliver, but because Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with someone like him. More than once, directors told him, "You're too muscular. You look more like a fitness model than a dramatic lead." Others said, "You're too handsome to be taken seriously." Sounds like a compliment, right? It wasn't. It was a subtle rejection. Because for Alan, being seen as a shirtless poster guy was never the goal. He wanted to be heard. He wanted to play characters with depth, pain, complexity, not just charm and abs. But no one gave him that chance. Around that time, social media had started to transform the entertainment industry. Talent wasn't enough anymore. Now, you needed a follow count, viral moments, a brand. Alan, a private, grounded guy who kept his personal life out of the spotlight, started getting left behind. He recalled an audition for a major role. He nailed it. The room loved him. He was clearly the best choice. But in the end, the part went to someone else, someone with a larger following, better online reach, more buzz. Hollywood doesn't always want talent, Alan once admitted. They want noise. And at that point in my life, I didn't have any. That line wasn't laced with anger. It was quiet resignation, the kind that comes after too many near misses. There was even a time when Alan thought about quitting acting altogether. He started writing scripts, shooting short films, pitching independent projects. Not because he wanted to become a big-name producer behind the scenes, but because no one was giving him a role worthy of his potential. And that label, just a pretty face, stuck to him like glue for nearly a decade. And after years of being judged solely by what's on the outside, it's only natural to wonder, are they right? Maybe this is all I'll ever be. His role as Hawk, aka Hank Hall, in the superhero series Titans was one of the few bright spots during that long stretch. Fans loved him. His performance was layered, raw, memorable. But even that didn't last. When the writers decided to remove Hawk from the storyline, it hit Alan hard. I realized I still wasn't seen as a long-term choice. I was just a placeholder. And when I didn't fit anymore, they moved on without a second thought. That sense of being disposable led to a quiet kind of heartbreak. Alan slipped into a mild depression. He stopped chasing work, took a step back, and started focusing on the small, grounding things he'd been neglecting: writing, reading, playing with his kids, sitting in stillness. But what truly set Alan apart was this: he didn't let the pain drown him. He didn't spiral into blame or bitterness. Instead, he returned to something deeper. Something that had always given him peace and purpose: his faith. To Alan, religion wasn't about putting himself on a pedestal. It was about anchoring himself to something greater than fame, success, or applause. It helped him hold on to his humanity in an industry that could easily turn you cold and hollow. He began rebuilding from the inside out. No more hoping for lucky breaks. No more chasing overnight stardom. He just focused on being better, every single day, with one quiet promise to himself. If the opportunity came again, he'd be ready. And then, one day, the phone rang. It was Amazon Studios. They were looking for a new Jack Reacher. And Alan Ritchson knew, this time, he wasn't letting it slip away. Jack Reacher, the role that fit like a glove and changed everything. Just the name, Jack Reacher, carries weight. He's not your typical superhero in high-tech armor or a suave secret agent in a designer suit. No, Reacher is the kind of man who walks quietly into a small-town diner, orders a black coffee, scans the room in 30 seconds, and silently calculates exactly how to take down every person in there if it comes to that. In the books, Jack Reacher is a former military police officer. He's well over 6 feet tall, weighs close to 220 pounds, has no phone, no permanent address, and doesn't stay in one place for long. But when trouble comes knocking, he's the guy you want next to you. He's a perfect mix of sharp intellect, raw power, and primal instinct. Think old-school masculinity with modern moral depth, a lone wolf who's dangerous, but decent. Hollywood had already tried bringing Reacher to life before, casting Tom Cruise in 2 major films. And while Tom's a box office legend, let's be honest, he just wasn't Reacher. Not because he didn't act well, but because the character demanded something Tom couldn't give, that overwhelming physical presence, the kind where you just know this guy could break you in half, and would already know how you planned to hit him before you even moved. So when Amazon announced it was rebooting Reacher as a series, they made one thing crystal clear: this time, they were going back to the source. They wanted a Reacher who didn't just read like the books, he felt like the books. The presence, the silence, the depth, the danger. They needed someone who could make you sit up straighter just by entering the room. That challenge led to one very quiet audition. No hype. No crowd. Just Alan Ritchson walking into the room, tall, built, calm, with eyes like cold steel. He sat down. Read a few lines. Didn't overact. Didn't underplay it. He didn't try to be Reacher. He just was. And something shifted in the room. No one said a word. No one needed to. The casting team knew this wasn't a case of finding someone who could fit the role. This was the role waiting for the right person to arrive. And Alan? He was it. It felt like life had taken him on a long detour, only to lead him here, to this moment, to this exact fit. When Reacher premiered in February 2022, all doubts vanished. No massive marketing campaign. No A-list co-stars to boost the hype. And still, the show blew up worldwide. Within days, IMDb gave it a solid 8.1. Rotten Tomatoes hit 92%. Critics and fans agreed, this wasn't just a good show. It was the real deal. And the most surprising part? It wasn't the plot twists. It wasn't the fight choreography. It was Alan's Reacher. People didn't just watch him, they believed him. As if the character had stepped right out of the pages they'd been reading for 20 years. Social media exploded with posts calling Alan the Reacher fans always imagined. Fight scene breakdowns featuring him pulled in millions of views. News outlets began referring to him with one title: The Definitive Reacher. And just like that, the guy once brushed off as a pretty face who couldn't sing became the center of a global action franchise. The man once overlooked because he didn't have a big name was now the name. Alan didn't need to shout for attention. He just stepped into frame, and the world went quiet. Net worth, income, and the quiet life of Alan Ritchson. If you're expecting Alan Ritchson to live the typical Hollywood high life, roaring down the freeway in a supercar, flashing million-dollar watches on red carpets, well, you're going to be disappointed. That's not who he is. He doesn't flaunt. He doesn't need noise. And he certainly doesn't use wealth as a badge of honor. But let's get real for a second. Is Alan Ritchson wealthy? Yes. But he's wealthy in the quiet, smart, and almost invisible way. According to sources like Celebrity Net Worth and Forbes, Alan's net worth as of 2024 sits somewhere between $10 to $12 million. And sure, compared to Hollywood's A-list juggernauts, that number might not turn heads. But when you realize most of that money came from projects Alan built himself, piece by piece, year after year, it starts to mean something more. Alan didn't strike it rich off a single blockbuster. His income has grown gradually, from one role to the next, earned through hard work and consistency in a business that's anything but consistent. The Reacher series has been his biggest financial success so far. For each season, Alan reportedly earns between $500,000 to over $1 million, not including bonuses tied to viewership and renewals. And considering Reacher smashed expectations multiple times, you can guess the checks reflect that. Outside Reacher, Alan's appeared in some big-name projects: The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the TV series Titans. These weren't leading roles, but they still brought in solid six-figure paydays and, just as important, helped cement his reputation as a versatile, reliable actor with real screen presence. What many people don't know is that Alan is also a producer and independent filmmaker. He co-founded Phantom for Films, a production company he runs with his wife, Catherine. Together, they develop smaller, more meaningful projects, stories with heart and soul, the kind that don't always make Netflix's trending list but still say something worth hearing. These indie ventures might not generate blockbuster money, but they bring in steady revenue, and more importantly, creative freedom. It's a space where Alan gets to tell stories on his own terms, free from the corporate formulas of mainstream Hollywood. Alan's not big on commercial endorsements. But when he does partner with a brand, it's intentional. Fitness, wellness, clean living, things that align with how he actually lives, not just what's profitable. He doesn't slap his face on just anything. Every deal reflects the real him, quality-driven, simple, effective, and long-term. Unlike many celebrities who choose the fast life in Los Angeles, Alan and his family live in Florida. They own a spacious, peaceful home surrounded by trees and sunshine, a place to raise their 3 boys, to rest, recharge, and breathe. On top of that, he's invested in a few smaller real estate ventures. Not to flip properties or chase trends, but to store wealth in something solid. You won't see his home featured in glossy magazines. No camera crews doing house tours. Alan values his privacy. To him, a home is a place to live, not a set to perform in. Alan Ritchson doesn't live to impress. He lives to enjoy. You won't catch him stepping out of a matte black Lamborghini at some awards show, or rocking sunglasses at night just to buy a gallon of milk. More likely, you'll see him behind the wheel of a large SUV, one that fits his wife, 3 sons, and a couple of kettlebells in the trunk. It's practical. It's comfortable. And it's enough. His daily diet? Surprisingly minimal. No aged whiskey. No $1,000 steaks. No gold-flaked sushi. Instead, boiled chicken. Sweet potatoes. Steamed broccoli. Eat. Train. Repeat. It's not glamorous, but it works, and for Alan, it's meditative. He doesn't chase TikTok trends. He doesn't post for likes. He doesn't preach on social media. The only thing Alan Ritchson chases is quality in his work, his relationships, and how he shows up every day. When asked once about financial goals, Alan answered with a line that caught people off guard. "I don't need to be a millionaire overnight. I just need enough to take care of my family, support the people I love, and keep doing what makes me wake up smiling every morning." In a world obsessed with flash, speed, and being seen, Alan chooses to live slower. More honestly, with more depth. He might not stand out in a crowd. But if you look closely, you'll realize he's the kind of man you want as a friend, the kind of man you trust, and maybe the kind of man you hope to become. Alan Ritchson is the blueprint. Honest, humble, admirable. Now picture this: a young man once laughed off American Idol after taking off his shirt and singing off-key. He was forgotten by most, dismissed by casting directors, judged as just another good-looking guy. And then, nearly 20 years later, that same guy walks into a scene as Jack Reacher, standing 6 feet 2 inches, built like a Greek statue, carrying the quiet confidence of a man who's been counted out too many times. And suddenly, the whole world stops to look.